All right, we are officially live. Renee, they will be able to hear you, just so you're aware of that. There's obviously nobody in here yet, but... And if you'll give me just a second, I am going to pull up a little music for us to listen to in the background. So in case you didn't know this, Renee, who is in the room with me, this album that I play constantly, most of the bass tracks that these like 40-minute songs are inspired by, or I guess are included in the track, they're from Eve, the horror game that I love.
That's lovely.
It's kind of cool. So as I wait for people to get here, I'm gonna put together a list of talking points because I learned my lesson from last time where I showed up thinking I was going to be able to talk for a couple hours just by myself. First mistake. Let me read some of these comments real quick. Alright. Weird, it's not updating in real time. What? It may have just kicked me out of my stream. It just kicked me out of the stream.
It kicked you out of your own stream?
Yeah, it did. Are you still watching it?
Yeah, it's just your other screen I'm seeing.
Can you hear me?
Let me pause my other thing.
Oh, okay, well, there we go. It's letting me go live still, so.
Yep, I could hear you.
Interesting. Well, there you are. I believe that's you. I'll go ahead and wow, I sure hope I can read my own handwriting when I get back to it in a second. Hello, other viewer that is not my quality control. Give me just a moment to post and let the rest of the world know that we're streaming. I think we'll do a little bit of warming up, and I think we're going to focus primarily on his outfits today. What? Okay, let me grab the link. If it'll let me. There we go. There. questions on the other videos. Okay. Hope everybody's good out there. Hope you guys are snacking or drinking or having whatever will make the middle of your day a little more interesting. I have in front of me, I haven't tried it yet, the new Mountain Dew mystery flavor Voodoo. Let's find out what it tastes like, I guess. Some ASMR in the chat. Okay, it smells a lot like Mountain Dew Voltage. Ooh, well, that tastes terrible.
Oh.
Oh, sorry, for those who are not aware, my beautiful fiance is in the room with me. We share an office, so you guys will probably hear a little bit of her in the background, sorry. It's a clear-ish Mountain Dew. It's like a milky white. It's not quite the same as the actual white. I don't remember what the name of that white Mountain Dew was, but it tastes very similar to Voltage, but there's like a sour, it's not quite lemon, maybe it's bergamot? You want to give it a taste?
Sure, thank you.
And yeah, let the chat know what your thoughts are.
It smells like unflavored gelatin.
Smells like unflavored gelatin. I would agree with that, but a little bit sharper.
Mm-hmm. It's like sweeter.
Right? Undeniably citrus of some kind.
I feel like if Lysol was safe to drink and you put like a Lysol wipe in a bucket of water, it would taste like this. This is not good.
You want to share a link to the Discord? Put it in art on fridge.
Yes.
It has, maybe that's grapefruit. It's not good. It's not good. Sorry to break anyone's hearts out there, but the newest Mountain Dew flavor, don't recommend. You have the sound on, right? You tell me music levels are good. It's not too.
Control.
All right, picking up a pen.
I'm not getting any music.
Not getting any music. Okay, that. How about now? Impromptu Mountain Dew. Well, you know, waiting for more friends to arrive. I guess fill the dead space a little bit.
A little bit quieter on music.
A little bit quieter on the music. What's that? It's gonna take a second for the change to kick in.
Oh, that's very nice. It's aquarium vibes.
Aquarium music, that's exactly what we want. Alright, I think today we're going to primarily do clothing and hair. We're going to wait on the expressions, or at the very least I'm going to hold off on expressions, because I think I think it's a little too repetitive to be interesting for a stream. But while we're waiting to kind of get settled in, make sure that the link goes out to all the important people. There we go. What kind of outfit should we give him? Just as like a little warm up. Maybe
As a warm up, make him a jazzercise instructor.
jazzercise. Yeah, he'd have the leotard. Let me pick a pencil color to this. Got the leotard. It should be one of those 80s leotards where the hips are like ridiculously high up and you got the tights on underneath. There we go. Should I say something on it? Yes, it should. He's a Beachbody ambassador. Well, okay, my stabilization's a little high. My stabilization's very high. Did not need that much stabilization on my sketch pen. Thank you very much. There you go. So I did prepare a couple of talking points this time. They're mostly technical talking points. Some of the questions I've gotten on other streams. So if you have, any kinds of questions, obviously feel free to ask. But I am going to answer a few questions that were comments in previous videos. And some of these were questions that I'm glad you guys are asking, but I will answer again later. Because it's information that wasn't necessarily relevant yet, but as we move on, we'll get into some more in-depth kind of things, and it might make some of these questions a little bit easier to digest, the answers to some of these questions a little bit easier to digest, because throwing you guys into the deep end with a little bit of the jargon that we're going to deal with can be kind of overwhelming. So he's got those, he'll have those like super opaque tights. They don't make tights like they used to anymore.
They do not.
And what's he need? He needs some of those arm warmers that are like, they're basically leg warmers, but they're just the giant folded up, like ribbed knit sweater material. What else does he need for a jazzercise outfit? Yes, aerobic tights. We are, our warm-ups, we're just gonna give him a jazzercise outfit. Maybe he needs a hula hoop. So we are gonna do that varied hand at some point. A waistband, maybe a fanny pack for a waistband. There, he keeps his he keeps his paintbrushes in it. And his Adderall. Go. It's got a little fanny pack. Oh my gosh, we have a hair sketch that'll... He does have a headband hairstyle, we just haven't gotten to it yet. You know what, let's do that, like right now. Why not? Go ahead and dive in. We've already done the inks for one hairstyle. We should probably... Yeah. If you're coming in now or soon or recently, you haven't missed much of anything. We did a little bit of warming up, gave him a little jazzercise outfit, and we reviewed the new Mountain Dew flavor, which you guys should not drink it. If you missed it, don't drink it. Let's see. You guys are gonna help hold me accountable for labeling every layer that we start today. Off to a riveting start. I think we're gonna skip over his facial expressions for now and come back to those probably off stream. I think today we'll work on costumes and hair. They're just a little bit more interesting. Probably gonna be a little better for a stream format. He's probably got some flyaways that didn't quite make it up in there. The first couple lines are gonna be wonky, as always, just as we kind of leave our warm-up phase, come into doing actual business boy stuff. But hope everybody's enjoying their week. Hope it's been a decent Thursday. Friday's just around the corner, and of course yesterday was a beautiful Wednesday, 21st of September. Could not ever forget it. It was perfect, the 21st of September and Weeble Wednesday. You know, his hairline's not super well defined. I don't think I ever actually defined a hairline. Maybe we'll come in and do that really quick here. Just for ease of dealing with different hairstyles. he's pretty young. He probably doesn't have that much as far as variation in his hairline. It probably doesn't recede too far in any places. But you know, maybe he's got like a tiny bit of a widow's peak, just a little something there. Kind of visually interesting. And as we come in, we got a couple more viewers. I'll go ahead and hit up a couple of my talking points here. One of the first questions I got is, what size am I drawing with? And what size are we going to be using for RenP, the actual image size? So RenP has 3 options when you first boot it up. The largest size is 1920 by 1080. So the final character sprites are all 1920 by 1080. However, if we pop open the properties of this, you'll see I'm actually working at twice the size. I'm working at 3840 by 2560. So this canvas is twice the size of what we will have in RenP. I like to do this so that when I'm sketching and drawing, I get really nice, crisp, clean lines. I'm not held back by, you know, low resolution. But when I'm exporting, I reduce the quality of the image by half. And then when you export, that way it will fit in RenP. It'll fit that 1920 by 1080, and you still get decently high quality, because I find that if you're working in a specific size and you start drawing at that specific size, inevitably you'll run into issues with pixelization of specifically your line art, but pretty much any aspect of an illustration. If you're zooming in, or if you're using your liquify or lasso tools, inevitably you're going to make something bigger or make something smaller, and you'll see that artifacting, those pixels kind of expanding or shrinking. So starting with something really big and then having the size is a good way to avoid that problem. Which does bring me to a different comment that I got about shaving down the space. So when we were exporting our character, I'm sure you guys saw in the last video I made with the king that he has a huge amount of blank space on each side of his shoulders. It's because we are drawing at that full 1920 by 1080. One of the comments I received said that they like to shave down the blank space on each side of their PNG so that the character doesn't float around. I'm not sure what version of RenP that commenter was using, but it was definitely not the most up-to-date version. And I would not recommend shaving down the space for a couple of reasons. The first reason is that RenP allows you some functions like enter at left or enter at right, where you can actually control where on the screen the character will be placed. And doing that is kind of one of the issues you can run into if you shave down or you have an imperfect size for your character sprite, is that if you tell it to enter at left, it might pick the left edge of your shaved down space, and then your character will not appear on screen at all because it will show you that front corner in the left or in the left region of your screen. It's kind of complicated. Like I said, it's one of those questions that I was going to answer a little bit further on when we actually have RenP open, so I will come back to it, and it might make a little more sense once we're actually in the engine. But the short story long, I guess, is that you want to leave that blank space so that you can better control the direction with which your characters are moving on screen. Let's go ahead and define his headband first. The headband that he's wearing is actually a piece of religious headdress. It is primarily meant for women, but I think that kind of we're not really going in the direction of exact historic accuracy. So it's okay if there's some gender variation or, you know, anything in the sake of making the characters appear more interesting. But you'll see, go ahead and clean up this line, I don't like the shape I made. These long tails back here are going to relate back to the kind of fabric that we have, and we'll have a pattern on these tails. Where his hair is tied back, and that pattern is probably going to be very similar to some of the shapes that we're going to see on Sagan when we get to them. But yeah, questions like those are excellent. They're super helpful because that lets me know kind of where my audience is at as far as skill level or interest level. It also helps me define some of the vocabulary that you guys are going to be comfortable with hearing from me. I have a degree in game development, and so I've spent 4 years learning a lot of the jargon, and it might be kind of foreign to somebody who hasn't spent that much time in front of engines or around people who are talking about game development. So knowing that, being able to meet you guys at your level of understanding is really important, because that's how I'm going to be able to help you guys learn. If I come in here talking about things that you don't understand, you're not going to be able to learn. So comments like that are super helpful for more reasons than you might think. As we come in, we have, you can see that there are forms in his hair that are continuing across the line of the headband. And I'm just gonna draw right through that headband. You know, I can always erase things later, but it helps gosh, I'm gonna choke. Oh, I'm gonna drink some of this terrible Mountain Dew about it. If you missed it, we had a little ASMR first thing on the stream. We tried the new Mountain Dew flavor. Voodoo. Don't drink it, it's not good. Yeah, I think it's like a grapefruity bergamot. There's something kind of earthy that's just not very pleasant for me. Can't say I recommend it. And oh, we got some lyrics in here. The A in ASMR stood for awful because of how it tastes. It's not great. It's not a great taste. I won't lie to you. I mean, I guess if you like grapefruit, maybe you would like it, but I don't know. I like a good grapefruit soda, and this is just not for me. Don't know if anybody in the chat is a Ting drinker, but if you are a Ting drinker, welcome to the Gentleman's Club. A refined palate. Drawing super curly, like tightly coiled curls can be a challenge for a lot of different reasons, not the least of which just how much detail you have to pour in. And especially when your art style is not particularly detailed, like mine, you can have a hard time kind of reconciling the shapes and the details with an overall silhouette that like looks good, but also fits into the visual style that you're going for. So I'm not going to say that my method is like perfect or right, but it is something that works for me. Just to start by defining that, oh, well, everybody say hello to Ethel. She came into the room demanding attention. She's very popular, and she's being carted swiftly out of the room like the criminal she is. As the music plays, let me know if it gets too loud at any point. The reverb or the lyrics, they can get a little loud. They're not in English, so I did choose this album hoping that it would be kind of background noise. But if it gets a little too noisy or just gets a little distracting, let me know. We can always change it up. I just picked what I normally like to listen to when I'm working. Actually, speaking of music, that does bring up one of the questions that I got in a previous video, which is, will we be doing our own audio? The answer is no, not really. I said it before, I really want to make this game in a way that could be made by a single person, and a single person who maybe doesn't have access to a lot of different things, like primarily the education. Something like 3 or 4 years of sound design experience, or even just the software required to make your own music. Tell her I miss her. Oh, Ethel. She knows how loved she is. Sorry, to get back to music. Even though music is beautiful and super important, it elevates all aspects of gameplay. For something like a dating sim, music is not really at the top of the priority list, because a lot of people play dating sims with other things in the background anyway. A lot of people will be listening to their own music, or even they'll be playing a dating sim on their phone. Maybe they're going to be somewhere where they can't have music. And most dating sims, if you've ever turned the sound up in them, they just kind of sound like elevator music for the most part. A lot of it is royalty free, kind of pre-made music that loops really easily. You can use it for a lot of varying things. So we're probably going to be going that route, just because this is something that theoretically one person could do. Hi, Ethel. I thought you got kicked out of the room. Sorry, we have an interrupter. You want to run the stream? You want to get over here and put on a little drawing glove? I just started getting a shape here that's a little lopsided, I think. There we go. Even though we're not doing our own music, we will still have a video or section later on about music, but it'll be things like sound effects and possibly even voice acting, though frankly, like I said, if we're trying to make something that a single person can make, I don't really see a way that one person can voice act an entire video game unless they're very, very skilled. Maybe Matt Mercer could do it, but I certainly can't. Though, if this series goes well, and if the actual game that we make from it comes out pretty decent, I have been considering making a second, more involved series, kind of maybe an intermediate as opposed to a beginner's, and we could do a dating sim where there are some more involved things, maybe voice acting, maybe character animations, maybe we could even do some mini games or utilize some plugins for RenP. Which does actually bring me to another question that I got on a different video, which was, will we be animating characters, and can you even animate characters in RenP? And while we will not be animating characters, again, because it's something very involved, and I want to try to make this as simple as possible, it is something that can be done. There are a lot of other videos and resources out there on how to implement animation into RenP. But if we do get to the point where this game, comes out relatively successful, or, comes out working the way that we want it to, I might come back and do a more intermediate, probably still a dating sim or some kind of visual novel utilizing RenP, but we can do something a little more involved that might involve a team of maybe 2 or 3 or more. But we'll burn that bridge when we get to it. We're going to go ahead and scratch in his little headband back here. And there you go. So now we've got his tied up hair for his little jazzercise outfit. Let's go ahead and remove some colors here and get a good sense of what this actual hair itself looks like. Yeah, that's not too bad. We might notice a couple of issues as we come in to add color, but I'm pretty happy with it for now. And I think it definitely fits this jazzercise outfit we've been working on. Should his tunic say something? His leotard say something? Can we make it say? Gosh, what's the capital? Yeah. Jazz Queen. There we go. His leotard says Jazz Queen. It's right. It is right. Here, we'll get these real nice high-waisted jazzercise tights looking a little better. That's kind of fun. Maybe this will be an Easter egg costume, or maybe we'll get into like making expansion packs or DLCs someday, and maybe it'll be like a, I don't know, an exclusive outfit or something. Be kind of funny. That's pretty fun. Let's label it Jazzercise. Suburban Hell DLC. You know what? Yeah. But, it's like the opposite of what we do nowadays when we make D&D characters, and we're like, you know, me, for example. Oh yeah, I just work I'm some guy, I work at a grocery store, but when I play D&D, I'm a warlock who can see into the future. Maybe there'll be a DLC where it's these characters, the divine artist, and he's a jazzercise instructor in the modern world. The Oracle can sell essential oils and read auras. They probably could. Though if we're being more realistic, they might be working, I don't know, somewhere like a grocery store. I'm sure you guys have seen that meme about the fact that transgender people these days have to work at grocery stores, cafes, retail to survive, when, you know, in past centuries we would have been highly revered readers of the future or mystics or something kind of fun. D&D, what a time to tune in. Welcome! You tuned in just as we were talking about reverse D&D for our characters. We determined that Fiyas would be, if he were in the modern world, he'd be a jazzercise instructor. It's a very fun outfit, I think. Maybe we'll leave it on him for a while till we get some of the hair done. Speaking of the hair, let's go ahead and do some base colors. So we'll have to hide a couple of things down here, I think. Where is this head sketch at? Leg warmers. We won't see enough of his leg to do some leg warmers. Maybe there'll be like splash art in-game. Not that much to carry around in this AU. Right? Maybe a hula hoop. He's got a little fanny pack. He'll carry his Adderall and maybe like a travel gouache set or something. Maybe a resistance band tucked up in there. But let's find our. Let me get rid of whatever sketch layer is. There it is. Yeah, got some of our references. I don't think we're gonna need our real life reference anymore. But we're definitely gonna want to come in here and give him some hair. And as we hit the part of the stream where we're getting more complicated, a lot more, we're getting way more, yeah, there we go, layers in here. We're gonna start putting stuff into folders and labeling those folders to help just keep everything organized. It'll also help us control visibility later on when we're comparing different things, but all of that stuff makes up his loose hair. So we'll come in here, and because I really liked the hair that I gave him in our concept art, I'm just gonna steal colors straight from it. We'll hide his expressions for a second, and I think we'll hide his body flats. But we'll leave the lines there so that when we use our fill tool here, we won't get blocked off by them. His hair did have a pretty green undertone in the concept art. I did that originally because there just wasn't a lot of green present in the other characters. However, now that I've kind of changed directions on the king, he still doesn't have a name, but now that I've changed directions for the king, I think maybe a little less green for Fiyas and maybe a little bit more burnt umber or burnt sienna, kind of, like I said, very Bacchus mulatto, like I mentioned in the last stream. Going for that kind of ill Renaissance artist, sort of plagued by his own, inspiration. Can't go wrong with burnt sienna. It's a good color. And I think it reflects, like, the richness of his character without necessarily implying wealth, because I think richness and wealth are kind of separate but can fall into being read the same way. Definitely the king with a lot of his green that's very light, very pale greens. It's something kind of expensive. You'd have to be able to bleach that fabric first, and you gotta be doing something not quite so manual labor intensive in order to avoid getting colors like that dirty. Maybe Fiyas will still have some green, but it'll be much darker, I think. Let's see, let me hit up some of these talking points that I wrote down before the stream. A few more questions. Oh, one of the questions that I had was multiple characters on screen, having conversations between characters. So if you have been subscribed to the channel for a minute, you probably have seen Mindless, the demo that I posted of one of the other games that I made in RenP. And in that game, you do have multiple characters appearing on screen. You have Winston, the main character, who kind of appears at left. And then you have most of the main speaking NPCs. They all appear either in the center of the screen, or when they're talking to one another, they appear on the right-hand side. That is something that's super effective for a visual novel-based game that's not necessarily a dating sim, a game where other characters are going to be interacting with each other kind of at a quick-fire, rapid basis. However, for a dating sim, the times in which multiple characters will be talking to the player character at once are actually kind of few and far between. You might be surprised how little, like, multiple character interaction comes up. And when it does, it's frequently whichever character is speaking is shown on screen, and then they disappear and the new character comes in and that character starts speaking. And I think that for the purposes of our game, which again is supposed to be very beginner friendly, we're going to be doing something more like that. However, having multiple characters on screen is super easy. It is in the documentation for even just the tutorial of RenP. So if you've downloaded RenP already, I'm sure you've been on the website, you've seen the documentation screen. If you follow that tutorial, right in it, it's less than 16 lines of code, I think. It shows you how to have multiple characters on screen. Like I said, if we make a more intermediate game someday, we'll probably do that. Probably have a lot of characters on screen interacting with one another so that we can do a more involved story. But there's a lot of ifs before we get there, and one of the big ifs is if we're gonna keep this jazzercise outfit or not. I think we will. I think it's fun. Another one of the ifs is if I have done enough work by hand for the fill tool to work. Perfect. I really like using Clip Studio Paint, but one of the issues that I do foresee with it that I think some people who use Photoshop may not have the same problem is that the fill tool is a little jumpy. I've really fine-tuned my paint bucket tool, but it still doesn't work quite the way I want it to, so I have to come in manually and clean up some of that dead space. I know that some people prefer the method of using the lasso tool to kind of select areas they want highlighted and then fill it in that way. My hands are shaky, so that method is really difficult for me. But it can be done. There's definitely more than one way to skin a cat or fill in a character's hairline. And while I'm coming in here and we're filling the flat color for his hair, I am also going to make some flyaways. Maybe I'll make them a little thinner than that. But one thing that I don't see a lot of people doing in their character sprites, and one thing that I think is really interesting when done with character sprites, is breaking your outlines. Now there are some reasons that you don't want to do this. The fact that you're going to be changing backgrounds, you want your characters to stand out from the background. Flyaways may not always be noticed. They might not be visible on every background, and in fact they might only be visible on a few. But for the ones that they are visible, it really helps blend your character into the world around them. It makes them feel like they belong there. Like they haven't been, I don't know, cut and pasted and slapped on top as a transparent image. So flyaways or varying opacities, things that can be done with PNG images, we definitely want to push the boundaries on these a little in order to create characters that feel like they're living in a world, not like they have been put on top of a world. And it'll let us put a couple more curls in his hair. I am going to apologize and move my bag over to the ground so that hopefully you guys don't hear it so much, but the stream snack that I chose today was a terrible stream snack. It's a hummus and pita chips. So I'm gonna apologize for crunching and lean my head back so you guys don't hear me. It doesn't help that my pita chips are stale. I think my microphone might be a little too sensitive for me to be able to thoroughly enjoy my snack. Have PTSD, sorry. I won't be eating anymore. I'll just keep drinking my terrible Mountain Dew. This is kind of I guess a fun fact about me, which is that I don't necessarily like Mountain Dew. In fact, I'm really not fond of just plain old Mountain Dew. But I have this bug in my brain where I have to try every flavor of Mountain Dew that I can get my hands on. So far, my favorite flavor of Mountain Dew is the Twisted Apple one it was a Halloween flavor last year. And I think my least favorites have been the Raspberry Lemonade and the one I'm drinking right now. The Mango Mountain Dew was pretty good, but it was way more Mountain Dew and way less mango. Can never beat a Baja Blast. Hi Caden, hi Sharon, shout outs. My friend and his beautiful, wonderful mom are watching, so they deserve a shout out. And Caden is also my focus group for this character, because this is his favorite character, so he's going to be in the background telling us that the Jazzercise outfit is the wrong choice, or maybe the right choice. Heck yeah. I think the Jazzercise outfit is fun. I think this is what we'll do for most of the other characters now. When we're waiting for people to come in at the start of the stream, we can just give them some silly modern outfits. But I think that's a pretty good start for his hair. And so you can see how those flyaways are breaking the silhouette and helping him kind of fill out the space of his character a little more. Let's see, make sure we don't have any of the skin peeking through. One thing that can also help is to just hide the internal lines. There we go. I have made pita bread a few times to horrible results. But I found that naan bread is a little easier to make, and they don't taste the same, but they taste similar enough that any recipe that you could probably use pita bread for, you could just as easily use naan bread for. So if you have trouble with pita, maybe try naan. That's my fiance in the chat. She's only saying that because she likes my naan bread. The pockets. Naan will get pockets if you heat it up, or if you cook it on something that is already very hot. They don't get as big as pita pockets, for sure, depending on how thin you roll your naan bread, but you can get a pretty decent pocket. I struggle with getting a good pocket on my naan bread because my rolling pin is kind of crappy quality, and I can't roll my bread super thin. But yeah, the thinner your bread and the hotter your stove, the easier it is to make pockets. Anyway, back to the character design. Very easily sidetracked, as you guys can see. Go ahead and make a new folder for another hairstyle. Oops, maybe we'll spell things correctly this time around. I realized that all of the misspellings and janky names in my character sprites don't do the fact that I am a narrative designer any positive service, so we'll work on that. Whoops. Last. Goodness sakes, what did I just say? Ethel has been removed from the room, for anybody curious. She is a criminal who came in screaming and yelling, even after she was given her 5-minute warning. So she has been evicted. She'll be allowed back in maybe a little bit later. Let's see. Traditionally, this headband that he's wearing would have been a super bright color. How many expressions do you recommend per character / pose? Ooh, that's a really good question, and the answer is kind of hard, I guess. The answer is as many expressions as you need. So for the king, who I did in the live stream, he had 11 expressions because he had a specific amount of things that I wanted him to look like or feel. I have done character sprites for projects before where I've never done more than 5 character sprites. And I've done some projects with very involved characters. Specifically, I did a project with a character who got injured. So he had a wound, and then he had blood, and then he had bandages, and he had different expressions for all of them. And in total, I think he ended up with almost 20 expressions. So it's a really good question without a great answer. I think maybe we'll do a very thin, very pale piece of fabric for his hair tie, kind of stand out against his dark hair. And you know, it's a small piece of fabric, so it's okay if it's a little bit more expensive. Currently for Fiyas, who we're working on right now, CGs in your game are just sprites. I'm assuming that you're using the term CG to refer to gallery images or the still art that shows up in dating sims, and the answer is yes. However, we're going to hold on when we talk about drawing those because we have to do a little bit of world establishment first. We have to kind of figure out our backgrounds, and I wanted to do that in stream form or maybe in video format before we talk about blending both our characters and our environment art together in the form of CGs. But I think we will probably do a pretty basic storytelling format, which we will get way more in depth on when we get to the story section of developing the game. But where we will do some like quote unquote dates that you can go on with your characters, right? You can choose to join them for certain things. And if you make the right choices, you know, if you really flatter them or if you really make a connection with that character, that's when you will unlock the different illustrations of those characters, and we will go over how to put those things in a gallery so that you can view them later. But a lot of that stuff is pretty far down the line. But yes, we will be doing that. This is a hairstyle that I am getting the feeling is going to be very hard to fill in. We probably won't be streaming for quite as long today as we have in the past. Depends. We'll see how far we get on where I want to be. But I have a couple of other things I have to go wrangle around the house. So we might not stick around for almost 3 hours. I don't think anybody will really complain though. There we go. One thing that I do like about the fill bucket in Clip Studio that is not carried across to Photoshop is that you can drag your fill bucket around and continue to fill in different spaces with the same color. You don't have to pick it up to tap again and again and again. So that's kind of convenient. And this is me very unsubtly telling you guys that if you want Clip Studio, you definitely should get it. However, you should get it soon, because they're moving over to a subscription service that I personally find pretty abhorrent. But I'm not going to encourage anybody to pirate anything, so I will instead encourage you to get Clip Studio Paint as the whole service while you still can. I paid for Clip Studio Paint back in 2016, and I have not paid for it since, and that's something that I think is very important to a lot of small artists who don't have the money to do something like the subscription service for Adobe, or like the model that Clip Studio is moving to. So I definitely recommend purchasing the full version of Clip Studio Paint while you can for, I think it's still under $50. Because soon it's going to be much more expensive, or you will have to pay for a subscription. So definitely recommend, if you're even a little bit interested, just getting it to have it. And I find that making illustrations for any kind of game, not just a dating sim, but pretty much any sort of concept art or 2D image for video game development, I find that it's easier to make stuff like that in Clip Studio than it is in Photoshop, just because that's kind of what Clip Studio is made for. Clip Studio also has this really awesome, we'll pop it open while I'm sitting here. There it is. Let's see if it'll let me. There have been some updates. Here we go. Clip Studio has made itself a 3D material option. $49.99 under 50. I mean, it is technically under 50. I will also say I purchased mine, like I said, back in 2016, but I purchased it while it was on its end of summer sale. So I only paid $24.99 for it, and I think they might be doing a sale like that again. Not right now, because they're currently doing the International Illustration Contest, but probably after the contest ends, it might go back on sale. But Clip Studio does come with 2 downloads. I am on my second download. I had a different computer for a really long time that I used, and when I upgraded, I just used my second download on this computer. But great program, definitely worth it. And I did say it in the very first video that you could technically use like MS Paint or even draw with pen and paper. And while that is true, it's just not as easy. It's kind of the bottom line. It's a lot more difficult. So you can see how I kind of picked a bad hairstyle for ease of filling in. We're gonna have to do a little bit by hand, but that's all right. I did get a couple of questions in the last stream and then on other videos and comments regarding the rating of the game, how you determine it, and sort of like maybe what the pros or cons might be to having a game that's maybe rated a little bit more maturely or a game that's rated a little bit less maturely. The first thing that you should know about game development is that you, as the creator, do not really get to determine the rating of your game. Obviously, you can know, just from existing as a human in society, what a T-rated game is going to contain, what an E for Everyone game is going to contain, what a mature game might contain. You know these things already. However, you can do things like avoid certain themes entirely that might get you a higher rating. Or you can also avoid concepts like not safe for work artwork that might bring you into a higher rating range. You can avoid those things entirely, but even if you kind of think you know exactly where your game is going to be rated, you still don't get to decide that. It is determined by external players. Much like how films are rated by an external team of parents, right? If you have ever seen and really looked at the parental warnings on both video games and movies, you will see that they have been determined by an external committee. So when you have a game that's ready for publication, you do turn it into an external committee, and they will play it, or maybe they will read your script and look at cutscenes if you have them instead of playing the entire game, depending on the length of your game. And they might say, well, here's what the rating is right now, but if you were to change X, Y, or Z, the rating would change to this. Outlast 2 is a really good example of a game where that happened. In the original version of Outlast 2, it was rated so highly that it could not be played in Australia due to sexually explicit themes. And there was nothing direct, but in some cutscenes, there were background voices that implied sexual violence. So the game was too inappropriate, kind of, to be played by certain audiences. So Outlast 2, right before release, they went back in, they removed and even muted some sounds, And then the game it removed all of the implications of sexual abuse from the specific cutscenes. I'm trying to be vague because I don't want to give spoilers, but it changed the context of the cutscenes enough that they were able to bring the rating back down to being just plain old mature themes. And that does relate back to the question about, like, what are the pros and cons of different ratings? Is that the lower your game is rated, obviously, the more people are going to be able to play it, and therefore the more people are likely to download it. This is the same reason that a lot of movies want to be PG-13 instead of R-rated, or PG instead of PG-13 rated. You want, families to bring their kids along to the movies to come in and see the newest Avengers movies. So maybe there are some movies that have themes or tones or even just words in them that come really close to the edge of being rated higher than they are. That movie Rango, where Johnny Depp is a chameleon, is a really good example, where they use the words like damn and hell, but it's still a PG movie, because they're able to make a lot of arguments about the appropriateness of those words. So there's a lot more science behind it. Yeah, and higher ratings do make people more excited. If something that would be, like, say, a horror movie, instead of a horror movie being R-rated, if it was PG-13, you might think, oh, it's probably not that scary, or they probably don't do anything all that interesting. Well, suddenly, if a movie is R-rated, you're like, whoa, why is it rated R? I want to go see that movie. I want to go know what that's about. Similar things happen in video games, like Alice Madness Returns is a good example of a game that a lot of people, when they were first looking at it, they were like, this game is not mature. This game is like a T for teen at best. And then as you get further into the game, you'll find kind of these implied explicit scenarios, and a lot of the later monsters in the game that have these very gory, grotesque imagery that change the rating. So it can kind of entice a player, right? It can almost serve as like a teaser. The idea that there's something more beyond what you're seeing, like the fact that Madoka Magica, by all accounts, an anime that if you look at a poster, that's a magical girl anime. Why that particular show is rated mature. It kind of entices people to want to go see what that's about. So there are pros and cons to each, having a higher rating and having a lower rating. And it also comes down to what your artist is comfortable and capable of drawing, what your writer is comfortable and capable of writing, and what you, as maybe a company or individual looking to publish a game, what kind of tone you are seeking to align your company or personal project with. Say, if you're somebody who wants to work on a Care Bears game one day, you wouldn't necessarily want to publish something that's akin to dramatical murder, and vice versa. If you want to work on horror games, you might not make a super happy, fluffy video game, unless you're doing Doki Doki Literature Club. But that's neither here nor there. For this particular game, as I write and draw the characters, I'm sure you've noticed, first off, the Ken doll situation, so we're not doing anything super not safe for work. But I think we're going to keep this one pretty mild, pretty T for teen, maybe even like a young adult. We're not going to... The reason that I'm doing that is because a lot of the people that I think would be interested in making a video game, and maybe it's their first time, their first foray into game development, those are probably younger people. And I don't want to alienate younger people by teaching them how to make a game that then they can't play or aren't comfortable playing. So if you know the phone game The Arcana, and the kind of situations contained in that game, we're really not going to do anything more intense than what you'd find there. Not necessarily mild themes, but definitely not the most intense game we could make. Not Hatofu Boyfriend, at the very least. What kind of pattern should we do on his headband? Maybe we'll do like a nice forest green. Man, I'm so hungry. I didn't think to grab any other snacks than very noisy chips. You give me just a second, I'm gonna pull up. We can actually see some of the reference images that I've been working with. Yeah. So this is one of the religious headdresses that I had shown previously. It's very similar to the hairpiece that he's wearing, but we're kind of looking at a blend between this hairpiece and this hairpiece. So it ties the hair back away from the head, but it's still like knots behind the neck. Hatoful Boyfriend is a very good game. I'm sad to say that I haven't played most of the endings. It's just very time consuming, but I really love what of that game I have played. Sorry, but now that we have this here, we can kind of see some of the patterns that are echoed. This one's a lot more simplistic, but I think Fiyas, as somebody who is involved with the kind of religious lead of the game, it's fair for him to have a more involved pattern here. Something a little bit closer to what we might be seeing on Sagan's clothing. The truer route to Hatoful. Gosh, it's been a minute since I've actually opened it. It's in my Steam library gathering dust because I played it right at the start of COVID, when everybody was locked inside their houses for a couple years straight. But I'll definitely go back and give it another play. Later on, when we get to story, we are going to talk about research. So that'll be a really good example for how to look at existing games when you're referencing your own story. I think maybe we'll do a really little claw-shaped pattern. Okay. Let's see. You can see I get really focused and I kind of forget that I have to talk in order for a stream to seem interesting. But a lot of the patterns that I made for the concept art was kind of a lazy, quick way of making a pattern, and I think we're gonna do the exact same lazy, quick pattern making now, just because you don't want to spend a million billion years on something that people aren't gonna look twice at. One thing that can be kind of interesting to think about when working on character design is cosplay ability. So this is something that I'm aware of just because I am a cosplayer. I competed competitively for, 5 years. And when you're making characters, and if you are somebody who wants to try to build up community engagement, you want to make sure that each of your characters has an outfit that is relatively easy to cosplay. An example of a game that does a really good job would be Dream Daddy, where all of the characters wear clothes that could theoretically be found just like in any thrift store anywhere in the country. And a game that might not have as many cosplay opportunities would be the Arcana, where the characters are wearing super intricate, highly detailed costumes all like throughout the whole game. I would say that at the very least you want to try to find one outfit that's relatively easy for somebody to cosplay. That way, when you have a fan base and you're trying to build engagement amongst your community, it's a really easy in for an amazing community of fans. Yes, Leighton Gray actually also went to the same college that I did. We missed each other by like 2 years. So I'm really familiar with a lot of the stuff that she's done and a lot of the talks that she has given on game development. And she has a really good game, I believe it was a GDC talk, about creating communities that care about your games and kind of how to manufacture a game that will go viral on the internet, I think is what she had called that talk. Yeah, small world. She actually graduated, or she actually studied the same degree that my fiance is studying, and even had most of the same professors. So, kind of cool. Sorry, had to adjust. My gamer chair is very squeaky, as you can tell, and I have some very outdated corded headphones that keep getting tangled up in my wheels. There we go. Yeah, I really love listening to like GDC talks in the background while I'm working on projects. Probably a pretty lame thing to admit, if I'm honest. But it is a really good way to expand your horizons, the understanding of games that you have. Because if it's something that interests you, something that you want to do with your time, it's worth learning about it. And GDC talks, or there are a couple of TED Talks on game development that I really like. Listening to those communities, getting in on those conversations, it's just a great way to learn just by being there. I grew up in a house that video games weren't bad per se, but like if you were playing a video game, you probably had something more important to be doing. So video games were kind of seen as like a form of leisure. And like I said, there's nothing wrong with that, but what it does mean is that I actually have a really hard time sitting down and playing video games, even though it's my career. I have a very hard time sitting down and just playing a video game because there's something else I could be doing around the house. So video gaming for me usually happens late at night, after all my chores are done, after everything is nice and peaceful and I feel like I'm back in control of my life. So it's kind of difficult for me to finish games, but what's much easier is to learn about games. Oh, I have a sneeze coming. I'm so sorry. I can feel it. Pardon me. Man, I had a sneeze on the last stream too. We'll blame seasonal allergies or something. But we actually start right in the middle. So bad at video games. I had to watch Dark Souls. Yeah, feel more comfortable playing visual novels. So this is actually, you're touching on one of the things that got me into game development in the first place, is the accessibility of visual novels, or the ways in which you can adjust a game to become more accessible. So something like a visual novel is so accessible on both ends, on the creation end and on the playing end. You don't have to have amazing timing or the ability to keep a beat. It's not something like a rhythm game or a fighting game where you have to be able to time yourself. And if you're somebody who is really just interested in engaging with video games kind of at a narrative level, they're a really good way to get involved. Where's the layer that I was just working? There it is. Sorry, have to come back and actually do art for a minute. I'm not going to be able to think while I'm doing that. Wait, what is in here? See, got sidetracked and I did something wrong. That's all there is, isn't there? Okay. There we go. As much as I like stepping outside of my own comfort zone with playing video games, I think for a lot of people who are interested in video games for the lore and the story more than the actual gameplay, playthroughs, and different games that are just maybe have like varying difficulty options, or even have kind of story mode only options where you just go through the game to kind of experience just the cutscenes or the things that interest you about it without as much of the threat. It's a really great way to make your game and the community that your game fosters more accessible. So I'm a fan of visual novels, I guess you could say. So as you can see, we are definitely doing the cheap man's way of creating an interesting pattern, but it gets the job done. And when we zoom all the way out, it's a pattern that I don't think most people are going to see super closely anyway. So sometimes if you have like a really big chest piece or a very unique like pattern somewhere that's very prominent on your character, you'd want to do a little bit more justice than that, but this is fine. Let's go ahead and put all of it together. There we go. Oops. Couldn't play Undertale because I couldn't beat the frog at the beginning. Yep, that's exactly what it comes back to with like playthroughs. I think specifically, even though Undertale is a game that's kind of all about the player choices, if you're somebody who, say, can't beat the frog at the very beginning of the game, you're not going to ever be able to engage with the choice-making complexes within the game. So that's why something like a playthrough, or like a go easy on me mode, that's the benefit of something like that. And I think there's a lot of kind of flack, I would say, in game development. I know that even when I was in classrooms, there was a lot of discussion of accessibility in video games kind of brushed off or treated as, you know, not super important. But I really disagree with that sentiment. I think that the more accessible your game is, the better, because the more people can play it, the more people can be part of your community, and, you know, bottom line, the more money you're gonna make. Which, of course, when it comes to game development, at least a little bit, that's a pretty important part. Whoops, wig. We'll get a sense for his hairline. There it is. Now, because we do have two hairstyles, something I should have brought up sooner, we have two different hairstyles that are going to be able to wear the same headpiece. This pinned up hairstyle. So these are his laurels. So all of the characters that are from the mountain and have, you know, the blessings of the kind of the made up gods that they're going to worship in this game, they will wear these laurel wreaths that are very similar to something you would see in sculpture for like Greek champions, or like men of power, or even demigods or gods themselves. We're going to kind of use that as a shorthand way of illustrating these characters' role in society. And so he's going to be wearing them a lot. He's going to be wearing it anytime he's not on the mountain where everybody knows who he is. So we have to be able to fit at least two of his hairstyles into this laurels. So now is actually a really good time for us to check the pinned hair, which, as you can see based on the sketch, it does fit, and the loose hair, which does still fit, but we are going to have to be careful around this corner here where the leaf is coming up on a flyaway. Food for thought, I guess. And we'll go ahead and hide those laurels so they don't distract me. question for you guys. Oh, actually I just got one. Do you use any psychological templates like personality types to build characters' personalities? To hell with that and just have fun making them. That's a really good question, and I think that both of the options you've presented, using psychological templates and just having fun making characters, I think you need a little bit of both. So if we can take a little departure here and come back to, if I can find where I put my presentation. There it is. We can see, this is something I touched on briefly in the last video with the king when discussing tropes, the use of character tropes. I chose to kind of start with a template, but rather than a psychological template or personality type template, I chose to do sort of an archetype or a trope template. So each of the mood boards that I used were characters that not necessarily physically, but emotionally represented our characters. Yeah, so a mood board is any time that you want to collect a series of images to convey the idea that you're going for. This is something that's really common for use in game development. I know it's also very common in animation and film, and I'm certain that it's also used in practices like illustration or sequential art. You are just kind of gathering images that inspire you or kind of get across the idea that you're going for, and you collect them before drawing. So a good example, right? Here's the mood board for the artist, and it has a lot of the traits that we're looking for, the Bacchus mulatto, the idea of kind of like illnesses and stuff. I did put Count Dracula from Van Helsing in here primarily for his color palette, but I did also put him in here because he has sort of like a deranged quality to his personality. He's sort of gone mad with this hubris, this kind of thought that he can't be killed. And I really wanted that idea of like delirium. So both visually and emotionally that character kind of lines up. But these are just a really easy way for like, it's almost like visual note-taking, I guess, is the best way that I could possibly explain it. So my visual notes on what I want my characters to be like. But coming back to the like having fun making characters and using templates, I actually try not to assign character traits, things like, I don't know, nice or mean or like happy or sad, because those are things that will change for the character depending on who they're interacting with or kind of where you're at in their story. And with a character for like a dating sim, that character is going to overcome some of their challenges. They're going to grow as a person over the course of the game. And the ways in which they grow depend on your character, or the way that the player character is making choices, right? Remember, like, any dating sim that you can think of will have like a good ending and a bad ending, right? Where if you make the right choices and you help that person grow in the way they need to grow, or in, you know, maybe a less intense dating sim, you just compliment them correctly or something, that makes the character happier, and that's how you get the good ending. And if you don't do those things, if you're maybe cruel to that person or you don't help them in the way they need help, that would lead you to the bad ending. And because of that, certain traits for your character will change or become more or less pronounced. So for example, when I say delirium and kind of like divine madness with Fiyas, that's something that will change based on how the player character interacts with him. You know, is your player character going to help him overcome some of these internal demons, his imposter syndrome? If the answer is yes, then he'll probably become more relaxed as a result. And if the answer is no, he'll probably become more neurotic. So at the very least, when writing characters specifically that have to change, and have to change because of external output, or external input, it's kind of difficult to create a character based on their traits, and it's much easier to create a character based on what they want and how they plan on getting it. that's, I guess, the best way that I can describe everything about the characters that we have, is that they are defined primarily by what they want and how they plan on getting it. I don't want to get too in-depth on that for each of the characters that we'll be making, because that's going to spoil some stuff for the game, and I do eventually want to actually have a game that could be played, so I don't want to give away everything to you guys. Trying to think of if there's one character that I feel like maybe we can give away as a good example. Get back to me on that one, and I might have one later. Of course, that practice of coming up with characters is very specific to game development for dating sims. You would not exactly define Master Chief by what he wants and how he plans on getting it, because that's just not the necessity of his story. Oh, I'm having trouble with this curl. I should probably spend a little bit more of my brain power on my drawing hand and not on talking. Maybe I'll just work on the other side, and we'll come back to that one in a minute. I guess that's not to say that the characters won't have consistent traits, because there are some things about a person that don't change no matter what. But I do think that having the whole kind of idea behind your character in mind will make it easier to determine the traits that won't change. But I really don't think there's any wrong way to develop a character. I've developed characters by simply just writing out the story. You know, sometimes characters come to you so clearly that they basically speak for themselves, and you really don't have to do too much thinking because they're so clear-cut. That's really rare, but when it happens, it's beautiful. There are a lot of templates online that people like to use for like different character motivations, or different ways of creating character traits via like spider webs, or even some people will use like actual character creators in other games. I've seen a lot of people use The Sims and kind of mix and match traits from The Sims to kind of come up with a final character. I don't think any of them are wrong. I don't think any of them are right. I think it just depends on what kind of story you want to tell. I hope that that long, winding, circuitous answer helped. One thing that I have considered that I think we'll probably revisit later, maybe once the channel has grown a little and there's a little bit more interest being generated, would be a shared Discord server where people can kind of talk to one another, maybe both about the video game ideas that they want to make, but also kind of like asking for help, kind of building a community that's bigger than just me, because I am not the expert. I'm just some guy who knows how to do this. But I think it would be, a really good way to build a community of people who are kind of, you know, like-minded in their goal. But it would also be an interesting way to maybe share skills across different people. Maybe somebody who is looking for an artist but is a writer could come in and find somebody who is an artist looking for a writer. Mixing and matching and finding other people that can maybe help you make a team to develop something you would want to make. That just seems like a pretty good community. Like I said, probably not now, just because this channel's not that big. I don't want to bite off more than I can chew. But if we keep growing positively, I think it might be a good goal for us to set. it does also come down to the time that I have. Like I said, I graduated from school, and I'm still looking for an industry job. But I do have to pay bills, so I have just a regular old day job in the meantime, and it takes up a lot of my time. It makes it very difficult to schedule because I only get my work schedule about a week in advance. So it can be kind of hard sometimes to come up with advanced dates for things like streams. Which does bring me to the fact that I don't have a current date for our next stream. Sorry. My schedule is not open right now, and I don't have my work schedule for the next couple of weeks anyway. But as soon as the next date is known, I still can't use community functions on YouTube yet, but it will be posted on my Instagram. So my Instagram is also Last Life Creations, just like the name of the channel. If you follow me there, that's where you're gonna find updates, and as soon as I have the next stream date determined, that's where I'm going to be posting it. I'm not super active on social media, even though I do have a Instagram, so apologies if you send me like a DM or something and I don't get to it. Just so not active. That stuff is really hard. Out of sight, out of mind, am I right? Sorry, I had a question. If I did ask a question, I unfortunately no longer remember what question I asked. Alright, let's go ahead and give him a hairline. I was thinking that these little pins that he has in his hair, I was thinking they would be gold to kind of stand out from his very dark hair, but I don't know, should they be dark as well so they're not distracting? Take a second here. I have a new snack. My fiance came to my rescue. I have garlic bread now. Hopefully it won't be as crunchy. Better, I hope. Man, his hair is taking much longer than I thought it would, unfortunately. Ebbs and flows, of course. Gold. Noted. I have gotten called out a couple times because I say that I am not an artist, but a narrative designer. And I've had a couple people point out that I'm doing all of the art for my game, so I am definitely an artist in that way. And the answer is yes, I like to do art, but as far as a career and as far as what I studied and know how to do, it definitely lands much firmer in the category of narrative design. I do have a minor in painting, so I am capable of doing art, and in fact something like concept art or 2D illustration for games, that's something that I could do, and maybe will interest me at some point. But as it stands, I haven't had any formal education with illustration, only with painting. Therefore, I don't know how to do a lot of the things that you would expect from a game illustrator. things that I will probably learn, honestly, over the course of making this game. But I don't draw environments very much. I certainly don't do a lot of architecture. And while these are both things that we're going to do in our game, they're just not something I know how to do right now. Maybe after we've come through and made the game, I'll be a little bit more confident and I'll be able to call myself a game artist as well as a narrative designer. I'm gonna go ahead and steal another bite of my bread. I think we can lay in a base here for his a little bright. That's better. One thing that I would definitely recommend if you are an artist or if you are looking to draw your own character sprites is I draw on a screened tablet. I know that a lot of people draw on tablets without screens and they're just plugged right into their computer. But whatever it is that you are looking at your art on, be it a screen tablet, a regular computer monitor, I even know some people who do their art plugged into televisions. Make sure that you go through the effort of color correcting the screen that you work on. So computers are super wonky when they come right out of the box, and the screens that you attach to them all have their own presets that don't necessarily line up with what your computer is trying to output. So there are videos online that would frankly explain it way better than me. But going to the effort of color correcting your tablet or screen or whatever it is that you are drawing on, whatever it is that you are looking at, so very important and so very helpful, because that gives you the truest idea of what your art is supposed to look like. Now, not everybody that's looking at your art is going to be able to see it in the same way that you do, because they don't have the benefit of a color corrected screen. Most people do not color correct their screens because they don't even know it's something they have to do or something they should do. So what I actually have is a dual monitor setup where my drawing tablet, the screen is color corrected, but my regular computer monitor, there is no color correction. And I will pick up my entire folder like this and just drag it over to my other screen. I'll be able to check, make sure the colors are looking good, even to kind of a regular screen or a screen that isn't as fine-tuned. There are other ways of doing this. You can save your illustration to like Google Drive and then look at it on your phone. You can even just send it to a friend and ask what they think. But having a color-corrected monitor from the outset will help avoid a lot of problems that you might face later, where somebody who might be looking at your art with a color-corrected monitor, say, and you didn't correct yours, they might go, why on earth did you pick those colors? Or worst of all, something that I have seen happen multiple times, is people will grab their colors by eyedropping instead of by using the color over in their color history. And it will be a slightly different color. Say they're coming in and touching something up. It'll be a slightly different color on their screen that they can't see because their color correction is not great. But if I pull it up on my screen, it'll stick out like a sore thumb. It's super obvious that somebody has come in and done touching up to pretty much anything. So it's definitely something that I very highly recommend. You guys think we should give him different earrings to match his different outfits? He just has studs right now, but his hair in the layer stack here, so where it is with priority to the body, it's above the expressions and below the outfits. So theoretically, we can put earrings on him if you want. We can do some dangly earrings maybe. Something kind of funny like that. Something kind of cute. I do love ancient jewelry. Cloisonné was a technique for wrapping jewels that kind of emerged during the Dark Period, which a lot of historians do not like to call medieval era the Dark Ages. A lot of people actually prefer calling them the Illuminated Ages because there's this idea that like knowledge kind of faded out during this time. That's not true. People were just as literate as they were before, and in fact, as literate as they would have been after. It was just that the knowledge and literacy became more concentrated in specific areas, particularly nunneries, convents, and abbeys, where religious figures would have held most of the knowledge via the Bible and artwork. And that's where you get something like an illuminated manuscript. I think we should bring this hair down a bit to match the length of the hair down here. Yeah, I like that better. Yeah, I like the idea of giving him some ancient pretty boy jewelry. I think that Fiyas is going to be the character that's going to have the most earth tones. He's going to be very grounded in spite of also being kind of insane. He's sort of the voice of reason on the mountain. Maybe that's just because he's a little anxious, maybe he's a little neurotic, but he is definitely the one who kind of keeps his head on straight when everybody else gets a little overexcited. So I think that an earthy palette will help kind of keep him somewhat grounded, and then it will also reflect sort of the more compulsive or negative traits of his personality, kind of colors that can become indicative of being dirty or unkempt, kind of a little self-absorbed, and definitely some colors that feel like a color theory can imply mental illness. I think we probably won't ever get directly into exactly what is going on with any of these characters, just because certain concepts that we have now just didn't exist back then, weren't known, there weren't words for them. So like, even though the king is an amputee, we probably aren't going to get a super gory story about how that happened. It'll probably be somewhat vague. And even if you have a character like Fiyas, who, by all accounts, is a very ADD character who has a lot of neurotic tendencies, we probably wouldn't be calling him ADD. We probably won't be calling him neurotic. We will find something that, you know, fits into the time period, fits into the world that we want to build. And it's also just looking to the past and explaining things in the ways that are understood by the people of that time. Changelings are a very good example. The legend of changelings, when you look at it through a modern lens, the children that are being described in these stories are really very obviously children with autism. But it's just something that wasn't known at the time, so changelings was kind of used to explain these things that people didn't understand. I think those hairstyles look pretty good. And I don't think any of them break the boundaries of each other pretty much at all. Let's do a couple more flyaways here, and then we might get into some of the soft airbrushes that I like to use. What do you guys think so far about our divine artist? You think you like the direction that he's going in, like his hairstyles, like his jazzercise outfit? We'll go ahead and bring that back up in case anybody forgot. We'll go ahead and make sure that we are saving. Actually, now that I look at him, I think instead of doing more work on his hair, we should come in and give him at least one of his outfits. So that when we start adding colors to everything, we'll know sort of where we're going and we won't get too far ahead of ourselves. Yeah, let's go ahead and do his tunica. So the outfit that we're referring to here, I'll pull up. Very similar in shape, but it will have more of a Persian influence. So matches up with the time period of the kind of religious headwear that we're going for. Though, thank God, it's not going to have that bowl cut. I want to add a little fancy register here. I think while changing clothes is definitely something that's optional for especially a first-time game developer, I think it's something that's very important to do. I think it's something that is definitely worth, at the very least, trying. Different costumes, outfit changes, they help portray a lot of things like time skips, changes in the world, changes in the character's personality. They are a really easy shorthand way of conveying a lot of information, and they're cute. You know, they make your players feel like they know this character a little bit better, make them feel a little bit closer to this character. And if you are trying to sell different, like, changing contexts for a character, say somebody like an artist who has to dress up very nicely when he leaves his studio, but then has a very messy outfit for when he's painting, just helps fill out your world a little bit. It's kind of like environmental storytelling, in a way. I think he'll have an artistic little register down here. Something patterned on it. I think that this will come from behind. And then even though he is wearing, I guess, basically a skirt, he will have pants underneath. There were a lot of robes and shorter dresses that men wore at this time. And not all of them had like leggings or stockings underneath. Some of them had straight up pants like this, and some of them didn't really wear much underneath. But there was a type of pant that was very popular called Persian pants. So we're gonna go ahead and use some of those. They're gonna look very similar to the King's Day Off outfit. Oh no, Ethel's yelling loud enough that she can be heard in chat. The door is closed and everything. Gosh, it still tastes like grapefruit. Weird. Every time. Funny how that doesn't change. Yeah, so even this one outfit, I wanted to be able to have the customizability option of removing his, the Demaltic jacket. So, the whole outfit is gonna look like this. Let's go ahead and pop some earrings in. You know what? While I'm sitting here staring at his face thinking about it, let's look at our mood board and see what we have here. Just some pendant style earrings from Howl is all that I'm really seeing. I don't really like the pendant shape. Not for this costume, at least. Maybe something longer. Not a hoop. Not a hoop. Maybe like a chain. Maybe he'll have like a modern day white girl cuff or something. Kind of funny, kind of cute. There you go. Maybe something, Maybe we'll do a little chunk of like lapis or ruby, some gem that would be crushed up at this point to make pigment for his paint, kind of helping to show his position as an artist. So this outfit that we're going to be working on, the context for this particular outfit is the game is kind of going to begin with all of the characters coming together to the castle so that the Oracle can share with the kingdom their most recent vision of the future. So everybody's going to be wearing these very fancy, very dressed up clothes, and they're going to be just kind of quickly introduced to our player character so that the player character can then make the decision of which characters to pursue, while getting, a little bit of a sense for their personalities, and kind of a quick idea of what they're about as a character. So he's not really used to the temperatures down here. He's going to be coming a little overdressed. But he also represents a lot of things being from the mountain, so he's probably going to be more overdressed, I think, than our Divine Champion, but not nearly as overdressed as our Oracle. But then maybe we will, as the player, we will get some time to talk to him one-on-one, and it'll be a little more casual, and maybe he'll lose the jacket. I think we can do just like a kind of chunky, I think rather than having like a well-cut gem, not that cutting gems was even really a thing at this point in time, but we can have sort of a raw piece of stone. We'll see. I might change my mind on this a couple times. Yeah. We'll see if it reads from a distance. Now that I've got multiple layers making up the outfit, we'll, whoops, put an A in there. We'll put them in our handy dandy little folders. Apologies for my mechanical keyboard, but also, what are you guys that don't have mechanical keyboards even doing with your lives? It goes tap tap, make funny noise. Now, even though we can barely see this right now because the inking color is all the same, we are going to be coming in here later and changing the ink lines for both his hair and his jewelry, and it will stand out a lot more. Maybe we can sand it down into like a teardrop shape or something. We'll see. I might change it again. Definitely gonna make it smaller. Alright, I'll deal with that later. If I sit and stare at it forever, I'll change it way too much and get upset about it. I think this is going to be an outfit where he probably won't be holding any props. We can go ahead and leave his hand as it is. I think the two outfits that his hand will be closed, where he'll be holding props, are going to be his artist uniform. He's going to be holding a paintbrush, and then his mountain shepherd outfit, where he'll be holding a shepherd's hook. I am thinking that it's almost 2 p.m. We've been here for a minute. We might go ahead and save and come back later, kind of soon. I think maybe we'll start the next stream by finishing up some stuff on Fiyas, but I will definitely do his clothing and expression inks off screen. We'll do some of the coloring, I think, together. And we'll kind of say goodbye to the end of the work we'll do on his sprites and start one of the other characters. So I guess I don't have the next character picked out, so I'll open it up to you guys who have been so kind as to be here. Which character would you guys like to see next? I guess I should open it back up so that you guys can see all of them. Yeah, of course you want Shiloh. Well, aside from my fiance, if anybody is watching back the chat or watching back the stream, go ahead and leave a comment. Let me know who you wanna see next. I really haven't decided. It's okay if you don't know their names and just want to describe them. I'll know who you're talking about. Not all of them have names yet. Don't tell though. I'll give him a little belt. How do you keep your pants up while you're performing? It's incredible. Belt. I miss Vine. I know that's an overused sentiment, but man, I miss Vine. That's Shiloh. Alright, so that's 2 votes for Shiloh. There you go. I forgot I had a layer that had almost everyone's names, but I don't think that we're gonna name the King Theorin, and I don't think we're gonna name the champion Alexius. I don't dislike them as names. I just don't think they fit the characters very well. The himbo, okay, the Divine Champion. It's a vote for the Divine Champion. Here, we'll do it this way. I'll keep a tally mark, and I'll keep track of the comments after too. So. Even if you're not here right now, I'll hear you in the distant future. Or I guess the future before I stream again. In the meantime though, let's finish up a little bit more work before we say goodbye for today. Kind of a weird wrinkle. Let me fix that. It's kind of difficult to determine where you want wrinkles to fall if you don't know what kind of fabric you want to be drawing. I think a lot of the time artists will come in and just say, oh, it's cloth. But there are a lot of different kinds of cloth, and they're all going to behave very differently from one another. So right now, the kind of fold pattern I'm going for is sort of shapes involved much stiffer fabric than what you might expect. Not quite like a denim stiffness, but maybe sort of a damask or jacquard stiffness. Something that's going to hold its shape a lot better than maybe like knit or silk. I think the best way to determine his hemline here is to just draw that first. There we go. I think that this is the part of the stream where I start shilling. So if you're not subscribed, thanks for being here, but you should definitely go ahead and subscribe. Click that big bright red button. It just feels so fun to click on. That's the #1 way to see when I'm streaming next, because I will be streaming here. But otherwise, thank you so much for watching. Thank you for coming back, those of you that have. It's always great to see support. I hope you guys continue to stick around, because I'm having fun. I hope you guys are too. It makes thinking about the fact that I'm working every day this weekend feel a lot better. Though there's still nothing that would fix that, I think. Oops. My pen's getting funny. I think that's the perfect time for me to wish you guys a good day.